Hey team, welcome back to another incredible episode of the Intentional Agribusiness Leader podcast. This is your host, Mark Jewell, and I am joined today by the lovely Melinda Witten. She is the president and CEO of the Ohio Agribusiness Association. Melinda, welcome to the call.
I appreciate you having me on today.
I'm super excited about this. I've been looking forward to it. We're gonna dive right in though. You get the same opening question everybody gets. What does it mean for you, Melinda, to be intentional?
Oh, it's the world's hardest question. So I'm glad that you ask it first. I thought a lot about this, and it dawned on me today as I was driving up on my 2-hour drive into my office. I thought
Mm-hmm.
what it means to be intentional is to truly sit back and listen and to take in all the different perspectives, different thoughts, different opinions
Mm-hmm.
before you center again and craft your own thought of how you
Mm-hmm.
want to either A, move forward or B, address the situation. And
Yeah.
so for me to be intentional, it's to really slow myself down. I might be one of those people who are like quick with the gut decision. You know what I mean? Like, my gut's
Mhm.
telling me this.
Yep.
So especially in this new role in this last past year, here with the Ohio Agribusiness Association, I have been very intentional about slowing myself down and listening. And when I say listen, I mean ask a lot of questions, but listen to gather a lot of perspectives so I
Yeah.
can make an informed decision.
Beautiful. I love it. It's so important to actually take a beat and sit back and listen once in a while.
hmm It is my favorite thing to
Mm-hmm.
ask a question and then just not answer or not say anything for a while, just to let
Mm-hmm.
folks sit
Yeah.
with it, not prod them, not encourage them, not persuade them, just to sit and listen. And sometimes I ask really
Yeah.
hard questions or really simple questions. Um,
Mm-hmm.
so this podcast is going to be uncomfortable for me because you're asking all the questions.
I know I'm in the driver's
Yeah.
seat. It's all good though. It really is. I mean, and right. If you've been disciplining yourself to be the person to sit back and ask the questions and not share all of your thoughts, right up
Mhm.
front all the time, it is nice to actually have someone sit down and ask you some questions
I know.
once in a while.
Nice or
And
scary? We'll see. We'll see.
yeah. Well, good. Give us a little bit of background on you. Help us get to know you better and tell us about Ohio Agribusiness Association.
Very good. I am married to a third generation produce farmer. We live in the southeastern part of our state here in Washington County in Ohio. I am a proud Ohio State alum. Go Bucks. Will forever
There
be
you
a
go.
proud alum. And I grew up in a small town in southeast Ohio in Morgan County, and I swore I'd never move back. And so I go to the big Ohio State University campus, and what do? I meet a gentleman who is one county over. So while I
That's fun.
never moved back to my hometown, I'm 10 minutes from
Yeah.
where I grew up. So I moved back. We have two small kids. My husband farms full time with his brother and sister on our 1,000-acre farm. Majority of that's in produce, and then we have grain on top of that. So tis the busy
Okay.
season around our household.
Yeah, absolutely. How old are your kids?
My kids, that's a great question. 11 and 13
Nice.
ish. Yeah,
Yeah,
around in there. Yeah, the years run together at this point. But
you bet.
preteens, but they're really, really good
Mhm.
kids and have been really busy working on the farm. The other day, my son had to wake my husband up because at 3 a.m. when they go in to load the trucks, he said, "Dad, you're late. We got to get going." So they're good kids. I can't complain too much. Um,
Come on.
yeah. So, but prior to my role here at the Ohio Agribusiness Association, I
Mhm.
had a 20-year career with the Ohio Farm Bureau
Okay, yeah.
and had multiple roles and responsibilities there over the year. And I was really loving what I
Mhm.
was doing and was extremely happy in the professional development space and the work that I was doing. But I'd received a call about this position and I thought, oh, that sounds
Mhm.
amazing, but I just don't think I'm the right person for that. And then I'd received another call
Mhm.
and I am always, or I was always in that role, telling people that they should make themselves feel uncomfortable every now and then.
Mhm.
Get out of
Yeah,
your comfort zone and go try something that scares you a little bit. So I took my
good.
own advice and landed in this role, which I have loved every second of it. It's been a little over a year now, a year and
Mhm.
2 weeks. So. The Ohio
Beautiful.
Agribusiness Association is made up of wonderful members. They work so hard to provide all of the inputs, support, services, and products that our farmers need on a daily basis. And so it's been a
Yeah.
really challenging side of the industry for me to learn, but also I've loved having the
Hmm.
opportunity to learn about it.
Yeah, that's great. For those that may not be familiar, and I'm sure I will learn too, it's one of the things I like about doing this show. But what does an agribusiness association do at the state level? What is
Yeah.
like what is it for? How does it work?
Okay, so my mother asked me this at our family dinner the other night. What is it that you do? Why do you guys exist?
Yeah.
Great question, and it's a fair question. We work on behalf of our members to provide training and education to help them meet all of the certifications that they need, whether
Okay.
it's grain grading and hydrost ammonia
Hmm.
training. We're working on a custom application licensure training. So we do a lot of education for our members and their workforce. But on the flip
Hmm.
side, which is where I've been spending all of my time this last few weeks, is advocacy and
Got it.
working on behalf of our members, um,
Hmm.
and making sure that we are staying on top of any legislative issues that may be helpful or hurtful to our industry
Hmm.
and to our members. And so I've been knee deep in pesticide language,
I'm sure. Yeah.
as well as PFAS and all those those acronyms that people throw around. I had a long
Yeah.
list inside my notebook of where I made notes of all those acronyms, but I've been learning
Hmm.
those these last couple of months and working really hard on the legislative front as well.
Yeah. Yeah. What is the general sentiment in Ohio right now? I mean, I could tell you North Carolina and the Midwestern, the other side of the Midwest where I'm from, but what's up? I mean, what are the big issues that are coming up in Ohio at this stage of the game?
Well, it's interesting. We do have we're calling it the not we, but it's been dubbed the Ohio MAHA bill, where they're talking about PFAS, as well
Hmm.
as food additives. So I don't think that we thought that that would come here in Ohio, especially
Hmm.
with our very strong Republican dominated background. But as you can see, it's been a
Yeah.
movement and it's moving across the nation. So that's a big piece that we're
Hmm.
focusing on here, as well as just the ability and for custom applicating when it comes to crop production tools with pesticides. That's been a really big lift for us here to make sure that we are in compliance with US EPA, but we're still
Yeah.
allowing the right people to become certified in
Hmm.
that space.
Great. Yeah. It's always interesting. I mean, there are different niche issues, right? That come up in different states. And now that I'm in North Carolina, it's I have a very different take. I'm not as plugged into North Carolina ag as because most of my business is still Ohio, Indiana, Illinois, Iowa, Nebraska, Minnesota,
Yeah.
and a lot of the corn and soybean states. So I just fly back to, Minneapolis or St. Louis or Columbus or wherever, right? All the
Mhm.
time, Indianapolis quite a bit. So, but there's a different type of ag down here, and we just have North Carolina is very interesting because we have so many. Like the county that I live in is the fastest growing county in North Carolina. We add 60 people per day,
Oh, wow. So
and just imagine.
your urban interface is
It's a very rural, like we're just south of Chapel Hill in a very rural, what's historically a very rural county, but it's all going into,
yeah,
suburban development. I mean, it's going to be an extension of Raleigh eventually, right?
yeah.
Um,
And we
so it's pretty wild.
Are you guys talking a lot about farmland preservation? Because I mean, over 1 million acres, we've lost over 1 million acres here in Ohio, and it's just
Hmm.
it's gut wrenching to see that land go. But at the same time, there's a
Yeah.
balance. There's a
Yeah.
balance of growth. So
Yeah. The interesting thing here is it's a lot more forestry based. Not that there's not some small farms that aren't getting gobbled up along with it. And I'm sure there are, but it's, here you're not seeing what once was corn and soybeans and somebody has got some, or wheat or whatever that, somebody's got some history there and like they've farmed that. It's like, I mean, trees, maybe
Yeah.
you don't have as much of a relationship
Yeah.
because you put them in and you let them grow, right? So, I don't mean to sound ignorant, and I'm not trying to offend anybody who's in that's in the forestry space, but a lot of what's going into development now, right? These are trees that are ready to be harvested. The timing was right. The economy is right. The things, there's people coming here like crazy. So what does that bring? That brings people from places where people don't want to live to come to some place that's more desirable to live.
Mm-hmm.
And you just have to hope, like, man, like, well, don't like, you bring your voting the right way. Don't change it too much. I'm not trying to be too divisive here on this show, but it is like, it's good for a reason. Let's not mess with it
Mm-hmm.
at the same time. So those are some of my concerns as I think about living here. I don't plan to live here forever. This is a stage of life, and then we'll move on. But it's interesting to be in the midst of somewhere where that's happening so dramatically.
Yeah.
I'm just in our little neighborhood. I mean, we're in an HOA. We're on a golf course. It probably has been 300 houses built since we moved here 3 years ago.
Oh, wow.
And so when we moved here, we're like, oh, there's all these trees, but they were lots that were sold and people have been sitting on them for 20 or 30 years. And it just happened to be time. We bought a pre-existing home, but it's like, wow, like there was all these trees and now they're not. Now it's just big
Now
houses,
it's nothing. Yeah.
So,
And
yeah.
see,
Anyway, yeah. Well, I want to get on to, I mean, you guys get to support your organizations from an advocacy level. You get to support your members from a training level, certification level, those kinds of things. I'm sure that you get to look under the hood and get to know a lot of these business leaders and business owners in the ag industry in Ohio. So, I mean, what are you, culturally speaking, where are you seeing people win? Where are they struggling? Where is culture really important in the Ohio agribusiness arena?
It's interesting you bring that up. I had been on member visits last month, and I think I saw the spectrum, right, of where
Yeah.
folks are in developing and implementing their culture. Some have been there, tried and true. They have a really solid, firm, culture that's just people gravitate towards too. And then we have other members who are newly trying to invest in their culture and spend a lot of time in that. And I was talking with one of our leaders who serves on our board but works at a company that's really focusing on that. And he said, "Melinda, what should we be doing?" And I was like, "You need to be the culture you want, right? Like you personally have to personify that. Your leadership has to live that. It can't be something that you've said or written on a wall or put on a piece of paper, right, and then walk away from it. If
Yeah.
you guys are not acting that out on a daily basis, your team's going to see that immediately and walk away from it of like this isn't a value to them because they're not living it." And
Yeah.
so he asked, "What do we do here with our staff?" And I'm like, "We're such a small team, right? A team of 4, 5 with our accountant, such a small team." But I was just like, but for me, it's I show up how I want our team to show up. So if I know a team member has an event, I try to be there 40 minutes early to help them with last minute things, right? So I want my team
Yeah,
to know
sure.
that you show up and you help out. Or um, something as simple as my family food is the great connector of all, right? So
Yeah, of course.
lunch, I'm
Right.
like, even if you brought your own lunch, let's come in here and sit and talk and chat, right? Like, let's just
Yeah.
create that time where we can have personal conversations and it not be a forced driven agenda. So that all stems from the top of the leadership. And if they're willing to show up as in a way that they want their culture to be, then that's what's going to trickle down.
Yeah. Yeah, absolutely. I love first of all, love your answer. Great answer. And, some of those little things, and it's interesting. It literally just came up on the interview I did with another gentleman yesterday, Brett Bell, the CEO of Albert Lee Seeds in Minnesota and Iowa. And it's on his agenda to get around, and every week he has time blocked in to go see people.
Mm-hmm. Just to stop
Like
in.
not everybody's like, just go see them. They're not, everybody's in one location, especially, I mean, in ag, right? We have most of our businesses are dispersed geographically. We're not all under one hood, one roof all the time. And especially in today's day and age where most of us are spending at least some time working from home. So we have a lot of that going on.
There's one of our members, and I just value this person. I want to name him, but I don't know if I will. I just value him immensely. but he has a corporate office, right? They're a pretty big cooperative here. He has a corporate office, but
Mm-hmm.
he's never in his corporate office. He works from a different shop, a different location at all of his cooperatives each day. He said
Yeah.
about 2 days a month he's in his corporate office, sitting at his
Wow.
desk, and the rest of the time, and you can see it. His
Mm-hmm.
folks know that they can talk to him. They know that they can,
Yeah.
he lives what he preaches, practice what he preaches, and so he
Yeah.
just does.
Yeah. So good.
It's wonderful to learn from that.
So good. Well, what are you guys experiencing in the way of talent attraction, retention, other issues maybe that I'm not aware of? Those are the two big things that I think about a lot, that we talk about on the show a lot, but I'm sure there are other things cropping up there. So talk a little bit about what you're seeing on the talent side.
When I sit down and talk with our members about what are the number one issues you're facing, what are your biggest concerns, your challenges, labor is almost always at the top of the list.
Yeah.
And it's just gut wrenching sometimes, to
Mm-hmm.
see that, to
Mm-hmm.
hear that. From the farmer perspective, if I put on my farm wife hat, I'm used to that, right? We have 74
Yeah.
H2A employees on our farm, and I understand what they're going through, but to see the industry as well face that, that's been a big learning curve for them, for me
You bet.
in that space. So retaining talent is really hard, and as you're aware of, you have a good person, but that person might move between a couple of different spots, and it just shifts up
Sure.
the entire industry. It seems like, in the sense
Mm-hmm.
that now it's like when you pull out the 1 giga block, and they all just kind of rearrange themselves.
Yeah.
And
Right.
so I've seen a lot of that, but I had a conversation with a few of our leaders around this, of like, what do you need to do, we kind of had a coaching session, for lack of better words, around some leadership,
Mm-hmm.
or with some leadership, about retaining your talent. And ultimately, it came down to, we need to be really focused on how we are treating our employees, and people follow people, right?
Mm-hmm.
And everyone says, well, I treat them the way I would want to be treated. And that's where I always do, like, the biggest timeout, like, pause. That's not going to work for every employee. That's not going to work for every person. You cannot treat people how you want to be treated. You need to treat them how
Mm-hmm.
they need to be treated, how they want to be treated. And it's really different,
Yeah.
right? What's important to me, what my values, my priorities are going to be wildly different than yours, and how you need to be
Mm-hmm.
communicated with is going to be wildly different than how I need to be communicated with. So you
Mm-hmm.
can't just do this one size fits all of, this is what works for me, and expect that to retain talent, because it
Yeah.
never will. So they really have to invest time in learning how each of their key leaders need to be treated, how they want to be communicated with. You can't
Mm-hmm.
treat them all the same, or how you want to be treated. It's how they
Yeah.
need to be treated.
Yeah, I love everything you're saying. Is super interesting, and I know that we often have well-intended leaders at the top of these organizations. They wouldn't be there if they weren't. They wouldn't have accepted the role if they weren't at least well-intended, right? But there's something I call well-intended and poorly
Oh
executed
yeah,
sometimes,
yeah,
right? And that's one of and it's not even it's obviously it's not intentional, but that may be the problem, right? That it's not intentional, and it's a challenge that we've been at the Momentum Company now. Like, we're really diving into head first to help our clients solve for, because that there's nothing more frustrating than investing in developing someone, and having a lot of hopes and dreams for how that person's going to help your organization, and then they take off,
yeah.
right? Or there's a lot of start stop, even with some entry level positions, or whatever the case may be. And a lot of our folks, I don't know if you're seeing this at all. I'd be interested in, let me know if you do it. And it's neither here nor there whether you do or not. But so a lot of our folks are really struggling with this new Gen Z, the management thereof. It does seem, I'm kind of on that cusp between the Xers and the millennials, and we were accused of having low loyalty, and it doesn't seem to have improved over the last 20 years.
No,
So
and it's
yeah.
the loyalty their loyalty doesn't rely with employers. Their loyalty relies with their family and their friends. And
Yeah. Yeah.
I had somebody ask me, they're like, well, why are folks like so quick to, want to work less or want to do this or want to do that? And I was like, well, every generation prior to this has said, oh, I wish I would not have worked more and I would have invested more in my family. Well,
Hmm.
folks, they're listening. Like
Yeah. That's just it.
they're taking your advice.
I am 100% in your camp. I mean, it's like, so, I mean, our Thriving Leader is our flagship program. We've run this thing. We're about to do our 150th Thriving Leader in
Oh,
August.
wow.
Okay. And I mean, I was just going through my email list the other day of past participants. It's over 3,000 people long that have been through this program. And so we've got a pretty good body of work. We've got a good demographic that we can, look back and see all the people that have gone through this 2-day program and over the last decade. And I look at it and I just think about some of the stories and all the things that they've shared and the breakthroughs that were had. When we ask a question at the opening of every Thriving Leader program, and we basically say, since you're here for this 2-day training, not all of them wanted to be there when their employer signed them up, and that's common. So we ask them a question, say, since you're here, what do you need? What would you need to take away from this to make this a worthy investment of your time? What would make you glad? What would make you call your husband or wife on the way home and say, this was worth it, right? And the top 3 things that we're getting from ag industry employees on that question across every single classroom for the last decade: time management, work-life balance, stress management.
I could have named those.
It's like, and it's not rocket science. I mean, it's no big surprise, but it is the big problem. So now what we have is this new generation who basically has come up with boundaries in place and just saying, I'm not doing it. And so we're sort of stuck in this weird standoff where we still have to solve for the work's got to get done.
Mm-hmm.
But also there's another camp that's coming up that's saying, I'm not willing to sacrifice time, peace, and sleep and health and family to get it.
Mm-hmm.
So this is like a really weird time conversation to be going through this, because like it's been talked about for at least the last 25 years that I've been out here doing this.
Absolutely.
So, but nobody's really execute. I mean, individuals execute on it very well, but as a whole, I don't see it executed executed very intentionally or very well. So I think that's one of the interesting things that we're walking into with this new generation.
I forget. I don't remember whether it was the New Yorker or the Atlantic or whatever, but I read like the death of the 40-hour work week.
Yeah.
And I was just like, that is definitely going to be a big shift for our members to push through. But within this industry, it's even harder because it's seasonal.
Yeah.
And you literally have to work with the sunshines, right? Make hay when the sun shines. You literally have to do that. And so the demands are really, really hard on a very tight window, on a very seasonal basis. And so it's for those folks with very strong boundaries, it's even harder for us to have to bridge that gap. Yeah, it's definitely, sir, I think if you can solve that problem, you will have.
Well, I don't know that there's can you solve the problem? I don't know, but one thing that we do know is that when we help people become more clear, at least they know what to do. Yeah. Right. And what I'm finding, and this is just honest feedback to those listening who are leading people, is role clarity is not as good as you think it is. And so you need to spend more time on that. Mm-hmm. What the next level of better looks like and what the next 2-3 years of development look like. It takes you a lot of time to sit down and figure that out on what development looks like for that person. You can't just hand them a set of truck keys and say, go get them, Tiger, anymore. Like that doesn't work, and that hasn't worked for a long time. So those are some of the things. Like, can you actually it does take a lot of time and intention as a leader. It's one of the reasons this show is called the Intentional Agribusiness Leader, agribusiness, because that's our niche and that's our focus. And that's 98% of our customers, but intentional because I've seen the lack of intention from a leadership perspective across the industry. And that's what we're trying to solve for. So
And
It's
it's
gonna, yeah,
easy to do when you feel like there's so much going on around you, right? And so you're dealing with the fires right in front of you, but ultimately you're creating more
that's it.
fires right in front of you if you don't
Yeah.
step back every now and then and have a big picture plan.
It's a sort of a chicken and egg problem,
Mhm.
right? I mean, you're either going to have to sacrifice some fires in the short run to go solve for this, or and by the way, we have several clients that have solved for it and are doing a great job of this, and they don't have talent issues, they don't have labor shortages, and they're in very rural areas, and it doesn't make sense. But I will say this: they've solved for one key thing. We teach this in one of our programs. It's called the attractor factor, and they become very, very clear on who they are and who they're not, what they tolerate and what they don't tolerate.
Mhm.
And they're willing to lose people based on that.
Mhm.
When they have it, I call it the John Dutton factor. Like when they have it, right? It should be called that. We call it the attractor factor because that doesn't necessarily have the most positive connotation to it. But but it's just like it's when you have the attractor factor, like you will attract every leader, every team eventually over about 36 months time frame, that team becomes a direct reflection of the leader leading it.
Mhm.
Right. Um, and so if that team is having productivity issues, I always look to the leader first because I promise you that leader also has productivity issues.
Mhm.
If it's communication issues, then the leader, I almost promise you, has communication issues personally
Mhm.
because everything becomes a reflection of that person. And so if we can work with that person to help them establish the attractor factor, which is being very clear on who they are, who they're not, how they're going to show up, how they're not going to show up, and those things, man, it's lights out. The culture changes almost immediately.
Mhm.
Yeah.
That makes
So,
perfect sense.
okay, we went down that rabbit hole. I want to make sure we get some other cool background on you before we go, though. So, what's been the biggest challenge that you've had to overcome in your career? What's been the biggest win?
Challenge. I have had a wonderful career. I've been thinking on this question. Honestly, it's been myself. Probably, I've had to overcome my own
Yeah,
limitations majority of the time.
yeah,
When you're young, it's knowing or not learning that you don't know everything, right? Like that's a big hurdle to
yeah.
learn. And as you get older, learning how to have confidence in some spaces that might be new and different and uncomfortable to you. So I feel
Hmm.
like I have probably been my own biggest roadblock from time to time, but at the same time, when you step back and you think about all the things, it's easy to come through. My biggest win, hands down, easy to say, is when I see those around me succeed. Whether
Mm,
it's here with our staff and I see them pulling in the numbers for the events that they want to pull in, or sponsorships or memberships that come in, or at my time at Farm Bureau when I would see the young farmers
mm,
that I work with, succeed and win contests and have leadership opportunities
mm.
beyond the initial pieces. Whenever those around me are growing, I know I'm growing. So
Yeah,
that's my biggest win.
I love it. So good. And I love your answer on the biggest challenge too. I think that's everybody's biggest challenge is getting over ourselves.
Get out of your
Honestly,
own way. Get out of your own
you're
head
like
and get out of here.
you're not as bad as you're not as bad as the conversation in your head right now,
Yeah,
right?
exactly. Exactly.
Like go get around some people that can pour some goodness into you if you're having a rough day, of course, right?
That's
So,
exactly right.
um, what books do you like? Books, podcast, resources. Where would you point people?
I am a big book fan. I have a 2 hour drive one way, so I don't drive it every
Oh man.
day, but I do spend a lot of time on the road.
Yep.
I like books that make me feel leadership books that make me feel uncomfortable and or
Mm-hmm.
challenge my perspective or show me a perspective that I've never had before.
Mm-hmm.
This one didn't necessarily make me do that, but Radical Candor, I really loved
Yeah.
that book. That was a
Mm-hmm.
good one. One that kind of made me sit in a space that I had never been in before was called White Fragility. I don't know if you've
Mm.
listened to that one.
I've never heard of that one.
Um,
Yeah.
it's around race and
Yeah.
diversity,
Sure.
equity, and inclusion, but it was one
Yep.
that really just made you feel uncomfortable, but maybe in a way that is a positive thing, right?
Yeah.
That made you sit back and say, well, that's a perspective or that's somebody else's experience that I've never had. And now I can see
Mm.
this from a different lens. Another
Mm-hmm.
book I just finished yesterday was The Other Wes Brown, and it's about two gentlemen, both named Wes Brown. Wes Brown both grow up in a similar facility or city,
Mm-hmm.
but they had two completely trajectories, and it was
Mm,
based on those people around them and the
yeah.
influences they had and how that forged their paths in life. And so, really
Yeah.
enjoyed that
Interesting.
book. So,
Beautiful.
yeah.
Love it. Love it. I have a volleyball player daughter, and recently we've had some road trips for volleyball tournaments. We were down to Orlando last week, and we 20 hours on the road, so crushed a lot of
That's a
content.
lot of
Right.
content.
I so the no I This is like an update for the show for anybody who listens regularly. So Shoe Dog by Phil Knight has been like the most one of probably number 3 most recommended book
Okay.
on the show since in 160 some interviews. And so I finally listened to it. I'd never read it. I just like it seemed like a listener, and it is. It's. I think it's a good Audible experience, and would pass it up. But it's Phil Knight's story about how he started Nike,
Mm-hmm.
right, and how it got through the early years. It's fantastic. It was a really fascinating story. Really helps you get to understand that organization better, and even like some of the more recent controversies with sweatshop stuff and things like that they've gone through. Like I felt for him kind of like I feel like for the farmer in the US, because it's just a lot of misunderstanding. You only hear what you hear in the media about them, and that makes you have a bad,
Mm-hmm.
maybe a bad taste in your mouth toward Nike. But when you hear it from his perspective, you're like, oh, well, I can actually
Yeah.
now I understand.
Yeah. Well, there was
So,
a different intent behind that, right? That came through. That's
mhm.
a really good one. We'd listened to a lot of business war podcasts with our kids.
Mm,
And so
yeah,
that was one of them, Nike versus I forget what the other one was, but
yeah,
yeah, there was some of that back history there that we
yep.
picked up.
Yeah. Another one I want to drop really quick for you and for any other business leaders, people leading teams, especially at the executive level. It's called The Hard Thing About the Hard Things.
Oh,
It's by Ben Horowitz. And it's basically what to do after you screw everything up,
is it take
right?
ownership
It's a,
of like, all right, we messed it up. Now,
well, like it's not like Jocko extreme. I mean, it is. It's more of like in all honesty, it's an MBA in my opinion. Not, I mean, you're not sitting here learning how to read a P&L, but it's from a like how to lead. When the organization has grown and it got too big, and now the economy changed and you have to do layoffs. Like here's how,
yeah.
right?
Oh,
And when hard things happen, like you're running out of cash and you don't know what you're going to do, like here's what I did. And he shares his story about how he went through all the ups and downs of starting a business in the .com era, and then actually making it through the .com bust,
mm-hmm.
and then eventually hitting an exit. But basically, like what he had to do that, and it was incredibly hard, like all of it incredibly hard. And so his whole take on leadership books is they're often very like, oh, just do this and everything's going to be okay if you just follow my formula and do these 7 steps, right? And he's like, so when the 7 steps don't work, this is the reality, because they don't. I mean, it's not that they don't work. They work within a specific context and they work for the author. They don't always necessarily play out exactly just as that simple, right? Like life is not that, doesn't happen in a vacuum. So when the door opens on the vacuum and you can't, and you're on step 3, go read that book.
Yeah. The hard thing
Yeah,
about
that's my recommendation. It really shifted my perspective on business leadership, because I everything he's describing in there, and there's a section in there where he basically, every leader who's had any leadership experience at all will get to a point where they feel like they're the worst possible person to be leading the company, and right now it's in such shape that nobody else could do it.
so that's
So
universal.
you're
Okay, good. Yeah.
yeah, no, that's not just. I thought it was me too. Honestly, honest to God, I thought like I am on an island. I am all alone. Nobody else knows how bad I'm screwing this up right now, and nobody could be doing it worse than me. And there's nobody else to fix it, and I have nobody to talk to. I mean, I've had that conversation so many times. I mean, I lost my entire business going through COVID. I had to lay everybody off. I kept one person, and then she went to a new company 2 weeks later,
Mm.
which was the right decision for her to make. And so, I mean, it's having gone through that, and you feel like, man, like what I'm a complete failure is the feeling that I think, and it may not be that extreme for everybody, but everybody goes through some big roller coaster up and roller coaster down
Mm-hmm.
moment like that. Right.
Mm-hmm. Self
So
doubt for sure.
yeah. Yeah, absolutely. Okay. I just want to share one last thing. Like what role does vulnerability, actually, no, two more things. What role does vulnerability play from a leadership perspective for you?
The biggest role. I don't know how you can rank it, but I am very honest and open and transparent with our team. But at the same
Mm-hmm.
time, when we were talking about if you mess up, when you mess up, I need
Mm-hmm.
them to raise their hand and say, I messed up. But that starts with me
Mm-hmm.
being that way as well. Or when
Mm-hmm.
they come to me, and I think maybe I feel extra vulnerable because I've been, the new guy on the block for the last year. And so when somebody comes to me with an idea, a thought, a suggestion, a recommendation, I, am very honest with them of like, listen, I don't know much about this policy, about this event, about this program. Walk me through it, talk me through it, explain, for example, explain what delayed pricing means, right? And so spending some time being very open and honest and vulnerable about that.
Yeah. Yeah.
But when I'm that way, I see my staff that way. And
Mm.
that's even on a personal level. Whenever my staff are struggling with something, they know that they can call me and just have a very vulnerable moment and it stays there. And I have done the
Mm.
same with them of like, listen, I'm struggling with this and I'm going to be very raw and honest right now. But that gives them permission to do it as well. So I think it's the most important
Yeah.
thing you can do.
Beautiful. I love it. Who have you looked up to over the course of your career
So
that has really influenced you?
So many, but one that comes to mind right away. I don't know if you'd ever had the chance to meet Yvonne Lasisco. She has since passed, but she was a wonderful leader in the Farm Bureau space,
Mm-hmm.
especially in the public policy space. But what I learned from her more than anything else was she was her true, authentic self all the time.
Mm.
Whether she was sitting in front of the governor or at a farmer's table, up in Northwest
Mm-hmm.
Ohio, Yvonne. And she also
Mm-hmm.
did not have any kind of concern about bringing her whole self to the table. She
Yeah.
talked about her family. She talked about her children. She just was very open and honest, and
Beautiful.
she was all of herself. So she gave the younger generation permission to do so, and I very much
Love it.
appreciated that.
Do you know, I love that. It is actually in ag, it's very hard to pull that off. We are very judgmental of each other. And there's a certain part of that I think is really good. We hold each other to a high standard.
Mm.
I know that my training is
Oh, she held us to
exponentially
a high
better.
standard. She scares us. Like, still to this day, I'm like, what would
Yeah.
Yvonne yell at me for on this?
Yeah, right, right. But to be able to have high standards and still be authentic and real, like, that's we need more examples like that. Is my point. I would love to see more of that. I find a lot of people that are pretending to be someone that they're not in order to keep everybody happy, and that causes a lot of extra stress and unforeseen downstream consequences,
Yeah.
unfortunately. So, Melinda, it's been super cool having you on. Anything that you would leave us with? Any last thoughts that you'd like to share with the pod?
I just really appreciate you having me. And if I start on one thing, I'll say a million things. So I would just say thank
Yeah,
you. It's been a pleasure.
beautiful. Thanks for doing it.